Hello, my name is Annie Sneed, and today I'm going to be sharing my presentation on what factors in outdoor education can inspire sustained environmental stewardship. Field trips have been popular for over 100 years, and outdoor education in general is commonly spoken of as a wonderful method of teaching. And yet, there doesn't just seem to be very much data on specifically what factors, what elements of outdoor education will actually have a lasting impact. Often people are focused on the engagement and the enjoyment of the present experience, but there hasn't been much research done on how to make it a sustainable impact on a person's environmental attitude. So I'll be looking into today with this presentation what factors affect environmental attitudes and their consistency over time, and then how can educators apply those factors to their own programming. So first, before outdoor education can really be a successful experience, there needs to be a balance between the stewardship being imparted and the curriculum that is taking place. So a very common form of outdoor education is field trips. And during a field trip, park rangers and the classroom teachers must be able to balance the stewardship that the park ranger is trying to impart with the curriculum that the teacher needs fulfilled. And what this really requires is for the rangers to be able to clearly communicate the leave no trace principles and various guidelines of their resource in order for it to not be harmed. And the teachers need to be able to clearly communicate what specific curriculum points are absolutely essential and which would be nice to cover but are not absolutely essential to the overall experience. And there needs to be a mutual respect between those two parties in order for it to be a successful experience. It is absolutely essential for the balance to be there in order for the outdoor education to be productive, because if not, they students may get a fun experience. They may learn the curriculum they were supposed to learn, but they could damage the resource they learned it from in the experience, and that is not productive. They have not learned good environmental habits in that experience. And on the flip side, they could learn wonderful environmental habits and they could have a very productive environmental education, but they might miss significant pieces of the curriculum. So really, there needs to be that perfect balance between stewardship and curriculum in order for any outdoor education event, especially a field trip, to be successful. So once that has been confirmed and done, then we can look at what different age groups really need in order to sustain their environmental attitudes that are imparted by outdoor education. So in a survey of students who participated in an environmental preschool program, they were interviewed 7 years later, as were their parents, and it was found that compared to students who had not participated in this preschool program, the participants still had much more of an affinity for playing outdoors and also were more engaged in stewardship actions like, say, picking up trash or recycling. And what it came down to were there were 4 key opportunities that these children really tuned into and really needed to have in order for that sustainability to happen. And those key opportunities were, first of all, a proximity to an outdoor space, whether that's their backyard or a nearby park. Having that accessibility is absolutely essential to maintaining that connection with nature after being in this environmental program. They need to have spare time outside of their school and extracurricular activities to actually be able to go and have leisure time outside. They needed to be able to experience different levels of companionship in their outdoor adventures. They, at a certain age, should be able to explore nature to some extent alone, so they can have that sense of individual discovery, as well as with their peers, with that sort of group discovery. And yet another level of companionship is for those activities which are maybe outside of the child's comfort zone, where they should have adult permission, or maybe where they're on a deeper discovery, a longer engagement that's farther away. They need to have adult supervision. And finally, the students need to have parents who either already had an environmental attitude and were very encouraging of outdoor engagement, or were at the very least receptive to the student bringing home passion and desire for outdoor engagement and fostering and supporting that student's desire to participate in the outdoors and perform stewardship and ethical actions, whether that was their own parental passion or not. And that also, another factor of that is that the parents themselves need to not be so afraid either of nature, of letting their child be out in nature, or of not knowing things. Something very important that this author mentioned is that experiences for children are more important than concrete knowledge. It is much more important for a child to be able to go out with their guardian or a role model and just explore and learn together, rather than for the parent to not have that experience because they're afraid that the child is not going to be impressed, or they're going to be hurt because the adult does not already know everything about nature. So they need to be able to bridge that discomfort that they have and just go out and explore with their child and learn with their child. Moving on to preteens and teens, now they may have perhaps sort of an apathetic attitude towards certain things. They may be overwhelmed by the various changes in their own body and social scenarios in their lives. And so preteens, while they could remain very engaged with the environment, if they have a very strong role model and ample opportunities to be outside, they will continue to be outside. But perhaps even just engagement in sports or a family hike or camping trip on occasion could really, really impact them and really help teens to maintain their engagement with nature through to adulthood, where they can start making more individual and autonomous decisions. So this study did cover that in a 5-day camp of outdoor education, they did not give the preteens any screens, and they tested at the end of the 5 days and found that compared to the control group, who had screens for the entire time, the preteens who had not had screens had interacted with each other more and were much more receptive of nonverbal cues of emotions in various photos of people making emotional faces. So perhaps a child who is feeling particularly insecure and uncomfortable as a teenager will not only benefit in an environmental sense, but also in a personal sense from maintaining environmental engagement, because their social insecurities may be helped by engaging with peers and family members screen-free, which outdoors promotes. And their physical discomfort may also be bridged by the fact that they are using their body so often to play sports or go for hikes and do things and get to know their new way that they move. So for teens, a consistent outdoor activity can help self-confidence, but really the consistency must breed its own consistency. There still needs to be an ample home life opportunity and a supportive role model, whether it's a teacher, guardian, or just an adult who is supporting this child's endeavors. Then moving into adulthood, it was found that adventure education does have an increasingly positive experience as the participants get older and the experiences get longer. So shorter activities are best for younger children, and as you move to older adults, you can have longer experiences and the more impactful those experiences are. It was found that for college students, the 4 college students were surveyed, and during their environmental degree, they had found themselves very dedicated to environmental ethics and very engaged in stewardship, but they all reported a decrease in that stewardship sense after graduation, and they cited a lack of positive role models. So once you're an adult, you don't have teachers and guardians who are giving you your values or supporting your values. You choose your own people you surround yourself with. And they found that when they surrounded themselves, they often were with people who were not as environmentally passionate, and it became a little difficult for them to speak up about stewardship activities, and it made them less engaged in environmental activities. They also cited that they had limited time to say their commute was not amenable to taking a bike or walking or using public transportation. They absolutely just had to drive their car because there was no other reliable option, or they had limited finances from student loans and entry-level jobs that was not making it possible for them to donate to, say, conservation efforts that they were passionate about. So for an adult, they must choose their own surroundings. They must either find an environmental network or influence their own from who they know. And they must be stable enough in order to be able to really donate themselves to that activity of actually doing environmental ethical things. Now, another interesting piece of this is that the 4 participants became teachers of education in elementary school, and they all noted that they found outdoor education to be much more valuable than just plain physical education because it is much more connected to environmental issues in the curriculum. It help them to connect with their peers on a more discovery exploratory level than sort of the teamwork you get from sports and physical education. And most importantly, the teachers during outdoor education activities were able to model that environmentally ethical behavior, which, as we have seen, that role modeling is a very important piece of the puzzle. So an outdoor education really must be formed in a way that sustains itself. It needs to be accessible, and it needs to be driven in a way that promotes a network, whether it's an existing one or one that people create by sharing what they have learned. Students must also be comfortable with nature, and if they're not, they should have someone who knows what they're doing to show them the ropes. They should have some sort of foundation in the material they're going to be learning outside before they get there, so that the novelty of the experience and the location doesn't overshadow the curriculum they need to be learning and confuse them because they don't have any foundation for the curriculum they're supposed to be learning. And they should already be briefed on what sort of safety considerations to look out for, how the trip is going to be working, how any equipment will work, so that they're comfortable when they get to the field trip and feel at home in the environment that they are in and are not frightened or nervous about the situation, because that will harm their ability to pick up new information and enjoy themselves. And something to consider is if teachers are able to take their students, especially students who are uncomfortable with nature, to the same place more than once, they can have a primary visit where they really just get to explore and discover and get comfortable, and then they can return and have a more studious visit. So how can we apply this in a current way? This study was done in which this master's candidate, he combined outdoor education and environmental education, which are different things. Education is just education outdoors, and environmental education is actually focused on a particular issue of the environment and a stewardship mentality towards that issue. What he found is something similar to what we saw in the previous data, which is that participants should be comfortable outdoors, and if they are not, they need to be helped to do so. And then we see several different wonderful interpretive techniques that great interpreters are already aware of, which is creating place-based connections, so it's a personal and relevant connection for people, to incorporate other subjects, creating connections to history and English and maybe video games, whatever is possible to connect in to the material so that whoever is learning about it can really connect to it with things that are personal to them. And finally, close looking at appreciation, like this boy is doing here, not just seeing a whole forest, but really looking at the individual leaves and the individual insects and really taking in everything for all that it is, will really help people to walk away feeling much more inspired in a more sustainable and consistent way that will last longer. This study focused on children with emotional, cognitive, and behavioral disabilities, which is a very wide net to cast. And they focused particularly on children with ADHD and found that after playing in open green spaces, they had much less hyperactivity and had much more ability to focus in school than after just playing in indoor environments or in, say, a constructed outdoor environment like a playground. So really those open, wide green spaces with that ability for discovery is what's super key, remembering from before that experience is more important than knowledge for the younger children, that they really just need to get out there and have that chance to grow and try things. So something that can be done in order to incorporate this material is that classrooms could be adapted to incorporate more outdoor elements, have more classes that take place in outdoor classrooms, or have more windows or more nature brought in. And then also adjusting school formats so that not just science classes and physical education classes have the opportunity to go outside. Taking children outside for history class to learn about what this plant used to be used for or how it used to help people. Taking them outside for math to count things or look for patterns, or perhaps incorporating environmental issues into the statistical challenges in the math assignments that they're doing. For language arts, whether they're foreign language or English classes in America here, they can maybe go outside and write poetry that they're inspired to write, or a paper, or have them read books like Walden that inspire a connection to nature. And then I put a picture here because art class could also not just be inspired by nature, but could also take place out in nature. So there are so many ways that school could be incorporating environmental education, not just in that preschool, like that one study, but across as the child grows up. So there is that consistent role modeling and engagement to help keep them involved. Now, I'd be remiss if I did not mention COVID-19 and the impact that it's had on the field of outdoor education, with less revenue coming in because less people can participate in one program at a time, and there's not as really a possibility to run programs indoors at the moment. A lot of sites are losing revenue and they may be downsizing or shutting down, which is going to limit the outdoor education opportunities for everybody. And it could also affect the services which allow for accessibility for those who may not have access to an outdoor space. So what the field will really need to consider moving forward, especially right now, is when making those cuts, seeing what small services can still be provided, so as much accessibility is available as possible, and then really just making sure that after that consideration is made, what is provided must be really relevant, really enjoyable, really inspiring, and really have those effects so that people will keep coming back. And then eventually we will get back to a more normal time when all of the other factors will be the most applicable concepts and not just this issue of accessibility. Now, on the one tiny silver lining, social distancing mandates do promote outdoor usage. So many things that did not used to take place outside may be taking place outside now, which could start promoting this engagement of the outdoors throughout different pieces of people's lives. So beyond the COVID-19 impact, some other future issues are applying all of these factors I've addressed into a uniform national standard so that outdoor educators can trust that other outdoor educators are doing the same standards and that people will have similar experiences that they can expect to have no matter where they are. They will encounter interpretive staff who know how to make things relevant. They will provide close looking and interactive experiences that really engage with nature and the outdoors. There will be a promotion of role models, not just at the locations, but sending children home and sending participants home to share things with their family or their friends or their community so that they can build their own stewardship network, which is this next piece of that environmental dialogue. Creating that accessibility and opportunity for everybody, and then preparing people for what to expect and how to interact with nature so people who aren't experienced with nature or are still becoming experienced with nature will feel comfortable and safe, as will the nature, and they will help it and learn from it without negatively impacting it. Also, the changes to the school curriculum so that more engagement in the environment is across the board and the families are being brought in to that community of sharing this environmental passion as well. And finally, a separate concern is the use of technology, because the use of technology is really starting to grow in the field of outdoor education. It's been growing for a while outside of it, but virtual tours and identification apps are really starting to become something strong in the field. And educators are going to have to be careful to consider how much is facilitation and then how much is actually detracting from the close looking and the peer interaction of an outdoor education experience, and balancing that use of helpful technology with actual environmental focus. So with that, essentially, consistency breeds consistency, and if people can have outdoor experiences across their life that are engaging and impactful, they will continue to be engaged. Thank you very much. Here are my references. Thank you.